You know, in the world of WWE, there's no bigger prize than becoming the world champion. It is the absolute peak, the culmination of a lifetime of work. But what if that ultimate achievement is also the ultimate curse? Today, we're going to dig into the massive psychological price of holding that gold, a prize that lifts you above everyone else, only to leave you totally, completely alone.
Okay, let's just jump right into it because this one image, it says everything. You can see the lights, you can almost feel the roar of the crowd, you see the symbol of greatness right there on his shoulder. But look, his back is to us. He's facing his battlefield by himself. And that ring isn't just a stage. It's a place where friendships go to die, where the cheers of 80,000 people feel a million miles away when you're staring down someone who wants to take everything you've ever worked for. This is the great paradox of being a champion. You are the center of the entire universe, but you've never been more isolated.
And that quote right there, that becomes the mantra that every single champion is forced to learn. And that's not just for show. It's the cold, hard truth of life at the top. This is really the theme we're breaking down today. That the moment you achieve your biggest dream, all the trust you've built just evaporates. I mean, can you imagine the paranoia? Every conversation in the locker room could be about you. Every joke could be hiding some deep resentment. The second that title is yours, every handshake feels like a threat. It's a terrifying way to live.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this whole curse down. First, we'll talk about the lonely pinnacle. Then we'll get into the juicy stuff with when allies become adversaries. After that, we'll look at the unending war a champion has to fight. And finally, we'll tally up the price of gold.
So let's kick things off at the absolute top of the mountain. Before we can get into the curse, you gotta understand the sheer weight and history of what the WWE Championship actually is. This isn't just some new belt they came up with. We're talking about a lineage, a history that goes back decades. It is so much more than just a piece of gold.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Holding this title means you're carrying over 60 years of wrestling history on your shoulders. I mean, think about a guy like Bruno Sammartino back in the day. He held that title for years. He wasn't just defending a belt, he was defending an entire institution. Every single night, he had a new challenger who was desperate to make a name for themselves by taking him down. That's the pressure. It's the ultimate symbol of dominance, but more than anything, it paints this massive, glowing target on your back. You instantly become the most hunted person in the entire company.
And what's really fascinating is this whole idea of an enemy territory mentality. See, way back when, wrestling was all regional. So if a champion traveled to a new territory, he was walking into hostile ground. Well, today, WWE is global, but that mindset, it never really left. When you're the champion, every single arena is enemy territory. A guy like Ric Flair, he loved that. He'd walk into any building knowing he was the guy everyone paid to see lose, and he'd just feed off it. But for every one guy who thrives on that, there are countless others who just get worn down by the constant hostility.
Okay, so let's see how this starts to build. Because the most dangerous threats, they don't come from your obvious rivals. They don't come from the monsters or the villains you see coming a mile away. No, they come from the person standing right beside you, the one you used to call a friend. This is where the isolation really kicks in.
For a perfect and pretty heartbreaking example, you just have to look at Cody Rhodes. Here's the ultimate good guy on this epic quest to finish the story for his family, trying to win the one title his legendary father never could. And he gets to WrestleMania, the biggest stage of them all, and his dream gets crushed. And it's not just the loss that hurts, it's just the beginning of this absolute nightmare. Because the real gut punch, the most devastating blow, came from someone he was close to, Randy Orton, a guy who wasn't just a coworker. He was Cody's mentor in their group, Legacy. These guys had been to war together, side by side, and then, with zero warning, Orton just takes him out. A cold, calculated RKO that stole his chance. It was a brutal lesson. When that championship is in the picture, your shared history means absolutely nothing. And this shot right here, it perfectly illustrates what it's like to be champion. The RKO out of nowhere, it's not just a cool catchphrase for a wrestling move. It's a metaphor for life at the top. The attack you never see coming is always the one that takes you down. And it almost always comes from someone you trusted, someone you let your guard down around. It's a constant reminder to always, always watch your back. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's just Orton being a snake, I want you to look no further than John Cena, the guy who was the moral compass of WWE for like 2 decades, an empire built on hustle, loyalty, and respect, the guy who told kids to never give up. Even he has had to bend his own rules, make some questionable choices, all for another shot at championship gold. If the title's allure can corrupt even him, it proves nobody is safe. No friendship, no legacy is immune. So, this brings us to our third big point. All this betrayal, all this hostility, it reveals a really terrifying truth. Being the champion isn't the finish line. It's not a party. It's the start of a constant, nonstop war against an entire roster of hungry, desperate challengers. There's no peace at the top of the mountain. There is only the next battle.
And what's so interesting is the psychology of a guy like Randy Orton, who just perfectly embodies this threat. His ambition, it isn't fiery or passionate, it's cold, it's surgical. He's a shark that smells blood in the water. He doesn't see the championship as a dream, he sees it as a mission. And he will eliminate anyone, friend, foe, it doesn't matter who's in his way. He's the apex predator, and the champion is his prey.
And just think about what the champion is up against. You're not facing some rookie. You're facing a veteran of 26 years. Let that sink in for a second. This is a guy who has seen and survived multiple generations of this business, from the Attitude Era all the way to today. On top of that, he's competed in 196 premium live events. For anyone who might be newer to this, those are the biggest shows of the year. Nearly 200 of them. He's been on every stage imaginable, under the brightest lights. He doesn't just handle the pressure, he thrives on it.
And he's already a 14-time world champion. He knows exactly what it takes to get to the top and to stay there. So his entire being, every ounce of his experience, is focused on one single thing, making it 15. That is the kind of relentless predator a champion has to deal with, day in and day out. There is no rest.
So the champion has to live by this exhausting, brutal code of survival. Rule number 1, trust absolutely no one. Rule 2, understand that the line of people who want what you have will never, ever get any shorter. And rule 3, you have to have eyes in the back of your head, because the second you relax is the second you lose it all. It is a life of constant, grinding vigilance.
And this all leads us to our final and maybe the most tragic point. What is the real, lasting cost of holding the most coveted prize in this industry? What's the price you're still paying long after the crowds have gone home and you're just alone with that title? This right here, this captures the brutal reality of a champion's life. On one hand, you have the sound of glory, the incredible, deafening roar of 80,000 people screaming your name. But on the other hand, you have the sound of isolation, the profound, heavy silence of an empty locker room after a show, the quiet, painful moments when you realize friendships have dissolved because of your success, the texts that don't get answered anymore.
And that's the whole thing, isn't it? The physical weight of that belt is nothing. It's a few pounds of leather and gold. The real burden is the emotional weight, the weight of the isolation it creates. It's like this wall that just sits between you and everyone you used to be close to, a constant reminder that you're different now. You're the champion. And maybe you lost a part of yourself to become it.
So in the end, this is the creed a champion has to adopt just to survive. You have to understand that holding that title is a declaration of war on everyone. You have to accept that you're the final boss that everybody wants to beat. You have to learn to live in perpetual enemy territory. And above all else, you have to trust no one and never, ever stop fighting. To hold the gold is to bear the curse. Which leaves us with this one last question, right? After seeing the alliances crumble, after seeing the friendships shatter, after all the paranoia that defines a champion's life, is it really worth it? Is having your name in the history books worth a life of total isolation? Well, that's for you to decide.